For the region bounded by y equals 8 minus x cubed, the x-axis and the y-axis, find the volume by rotating around the x-axis and then the y-axis and compare the volumes. Okay, so let's start with the x-axis. So we know that the formula for that is from a to b of pi r squared dx. Okay, we know we are also bounded by the x-axis and the y-axis. So the graph is going to look something like this. It's going to cross here and then cross here like this. Okay, so this is a cubic function that's been shifted up 8. Okay, if you look at the graph, if you want to know where this crosses the y-axis here, you can set x equals to 0. So if you plug in a 0 for x here, you get 8. So this is at 8, y equals 8. And if you want to know where you cross the x-axis, you set y equal to 0. Okay, so if y is equal to 0, you would move the x to the other side, so you get x cubed equals 8. Cube root both sides, you get 2. So this is x equals 2. So that's going to help us with our limits of integration. So for when we're doing around the x-axis, doing this region, we need, we're bounded from x equals 0 to x equals 2. That's this region right here. So we have from 0 to 2 of pi, and then our region, of course, is the function 8 minus x cubed. We're going to square that because it says pi r squared, so here's our region squared dx. Okay, let's go ahead and integrate that. Well, first let's go ahead and square that out, make that a little easier for us. So we get the integral. We can put the pi out front of, let's see, we get 64. Multiply that. The two middle terms give us negative 8x cubed and another negative 8x cubed. So negative 16x cubed. And our last term would be positive x to the 6th dx. Okay, let's integrate that term by term. Keep the pi out front. We get 64x minus, this becomes 16x to the 4th over 4. Reduce that into 4x to the 4. And then this one becomes x to the 7 over 7. From 0 to 2. Now you notice if we plug in the 0, all of them had x terms, so they all go to 0, so there's no use messing with that. Let's just plug in the 2. So we get pi times 64 times 2 minus 4 times 2 to the 4th plus 2 to the 7th over 7. Okay, and if you multiply that all through, you should get 576 pi over 7. Okay, now let's do the other axis. So around the y-axis, the first thing we're going to need to do is solve this thing for x. So solve this function y equals 8 minus x cubed for x. So we need to move the 8 over, so y minus 8 equals negative x cubed. We can divide by the x cubed, or divide by the negative. That would give us 8 minus y, because we're dividing by negative, it changes the sign over here. 8 minus y is equal to x cubed. And then we could get that x is equal to the cube root of 8 minus y. Okay, that's the function that we're looking at. What are our limits of integration? Because remember, we are using from a to b of pi r squared dy, because we're going around the y-axis. Okay, so our limits of integration, we go back up here to our graph, and we say, okay, well, we're with respect to the y-axis, so we go from 0 to where it crosses the y-axis, which is 8. So our limits of integration are 0 to 8. So we get 0 to 8, put the pi out front, of cube root of 8 minus y squared dy. Now this one's a little tougher to integrate. We can't do term by term like we did the last one. Let's put it in terms of the 2/3 power. So pi times integral from 0 to 8 of 8 minus y to the 2/3 power dy. Okay, so what we're going to do is a quick u substitution. We'll say u is equal to 8 minus y. Du is equal to negative dy. So dy is equal to negative du. Okay, so we can substitute in for dy. We get a negative du. Okay, now we need our limits of integration. Using this, we'll find our limits of integration. So if I say, let's say u is equal to, put it in our lower limit, 8 minus 0. That gives us 8. That's our lower limit. And u is equal to 8 minus 8. Plugging in this limit now, I get 0. So our lower limit is 8 and our upper limit is 0. It's kind of strange, but we'll take care of that in a second. We also, remember, we have a negative du that we're going to plug in here. So we still have pi. Limits of integration are 8 to 0. Remember, lower limit was 8, upper limit was 0 because we plugged in the 0 and the 8 from here. Okay, we'll take care of that in a second. And then we get u to the 2/3 power, because remember, we did a u substitution. 8 minus y is u. So instead of 8 minus y to the 2/3 power, we have u to the 2/3 power. And then we have a negative du. Okay, so how we're going to take care of those limits being backwards, you can just flip the limits and put a negative sign out front, which is convenient for us because we already have a negative floating around here with this negative du. So if I flip the limits and I become negative, but then I multiply through this negative, basically the negative signs cancel. So I get 0 to 8 u to the 2/3 du. So I flipped the limits, I've distributed this negative sign, and now all my negative signs are gone. So now it's pretty easy. We have pi u to the, we add 1 to the exponent, so it becomes 5 over 3 over 5 over 3 from 0 to 8. We can fix that up, and we get, let's see, 3 pi u to the 5 over 3 over 5 from 0 to 8. Okay, we plug in a 0, just like last time. It all zeroes out. We don't care about that because they all go to 0. So we just do the upper limit, which gives us 3 pi 8 to the 5/3 over 5. You can do that in your calculator, or you can think about this for a second. If you take the 3 as a cube root, right? So the cube root of 8 is 2. And then 2 to the 5th power is, well, 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16, times 2 is 32. So you get a 32 right here. Okay, so this 8 to the 5/3 power is 32. 32 times 3 is 96. So you get 96 pi over 5. Okay, so the question was, we have our volumes here. This was with the x-axis, and this was with the y-axis. We need to compare them. Okay, so in terms of comparing, let's see which one is bigger. It looks like the 576 is bigger, but let's pop it into our calculator. So 576 over 7. And we can multiply the pi, but it doesn't really matter. They both have a pi. If you want to multiply by pi, that's fine. Let's go ahead and do that. So there's the decimal value of the top one. And the decimal value of the bottom one, divided by 5 times pi, is 60. So we get 258 for the rotation around the x-axis. We get 60.3 for the rotation around the y-axis, and that's it.